Welcome back, everybody. Happy to be joined by the OGs of Detroit Pistons podcasting land, Ben Gulker and Lazarus Jackson, both of Detroit bad boys, and both guys I've just admired for a long time. Really, really, really like their work. Ben has been a lifelong Piston fan, coming to us straight out of Holland, been in Michigan for all his life, been just a diehard Detroit sports fan. And Laz is the pride of Sparty, coming out of Detroit Country Day School, worked for the State News there for about a year and 5 months. Also worked for M Live as a high school sports reporter. So I am happy again to be joined by the OGs of Piston podcasting, Ben and Laz. What's up, guys? Introduce yourselves and let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, I'll start because I think I'm the oldest, and OG I think stands for old and grumpy at this point. Just crossed the 40-year-old mark this year, so good to be talking.
No, I'm 1 year behind you, so I'm right on your heels.
Good to be talking with you guys. Good to be back on the mic. It's been a minute, so yeah, happy to be talking. Draft is right around the corner. Breaking down the small big board, as it were, the top five. So yeah, happy to be talking to you guys today.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's good to see Ben. It's good to see you, Steve, as well. Excited to get this thing rolling, and a little fearful because draft lottery is Tuesday. It's right around the corner, and I have bad feelings. I have bad vibes around the entire thing.
Yeah, so we were recording on Mother's Day, May 14th, so just a few days away. We shall see how it goes. Before we get into revealing our top fives and talking about top fives and potential fits and all that, Pistons still are without a coach, unfortunately. And I think part of it is there's been a monkey wrench or two thrown in, probably positive monkey wrench, though, with Monty Williams being fired yesterday on Saturday. And then a couple days ago, Mike Budenholzer, Coach Bud, was also fired. So I just want to get your impressions of, like, who do you want the coach to be right now? And also, do you think both Coach Bud and Monty Williams being available through like a good monkey wrench into this coaching search?
I think Monty Williams is a good monkey wrench. I don't ever think Bud was really an option, both from the Pistons' perspective of wanting a coach who's maybe like a little bit more development minded, a little bit younger perhaps, and from Coach Bud's perspective, he just won a championship 2 years ago. Why would you want to go coach a 17-win team, right? I don't see that marriage kind of working itself out. Monty Weaver. Ugh, there you go. There's the first.
The DMV guys just melding together for the Voltron.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, so there is that, right? There is the DMV connection. There is the OKC overlap, right? They both worked in for the Thunder simultaneously. If you remember the reason why Monty Williams left the OKC Thunder, I'm sure Troy Weaver has like a great deal of empathy, and I'm sure that was a big opportunity for the two of them to build some sort of relationship, right? And then Williams did make the NBA Finals 2 years ago as well, or 3 years ago, I guess at this 3 playoffs ago, and is still a really good coach. It's a little bit younger than Bud, but I think the way that Phoenix team kind of rose was a little bit more. I don't know. It wasn't as ready-made as Budenholzer's situation was, right? Monty, they get there in the first year, they get in the bubble, they hit that 8-0 run in the bubble, but they show signs of improvement throughout the entirety of that season, right? And then they make the CP3 trade, and then things start to take off. I don't imagine that Monty took that job with the thought process of we're going to trade for CP3 and make the finals in the next couple seasons. So I think Monty is a little bit more development minded in that way, and I think that mimics and the work he's done for that backcourt in the pick and roll in the offensive creativity. I know it probably helps a lot of that is being run by the point guard, but I've been impressed with what the Suns have been able to do offensively at their peak, just from a schematic perspective. And so I would be really interested in Monty Williams as a Pistons candidate if he is a Pistons candidate. What do you think, Ben?
Les, great thoughts, I think, all around there. Couldn't have said anything better about Monty Williams in particular. I think what I would add, non-Pistons related, I think both coaches get scapegoated a little bit. I mean, certainly Bud, some questionable non-decisions late in playoff moments there. But, I mean, he can't make guys make shots. Coaches can't do that. And I think coaches can put guys in situations to succeed, but they can't force guys to succeed. And I think, Bud can't force Giannis to make shots and make plays, right? So Bud's playoff history is what it is, but you can't forget the fact that he did win a championship not all that long ago, right? I agree. I don't think he's viable for the Pistons, and don't need to talk about that too much more than Laz already did. I'm super interested in Monty Williams. I don't know if he'd be super interested in Detroit. I've said this before for those who haven't listened to the now unofficial Detroit Bad Boys podcast. I personally don't think the Pistons are a year away. I think they're a few years away. I'm not sure if Monty Williams wants to go from where the Suns have been to where the Pistons are. But if he's interested, there's certainly some young, tantalizing talent to go develop. And if he's interested in that, the Pistons ought to be flying him to Detroit yesterday, right? Because certainly, look at the situations the Sun were in this year. They had injuries. They have a massive blockbuster trade. They get a tough matchup. They suffer some injuries in the playoffs. And I just have to think that he was scapegoated a little bit for the way things sort of fell apart down the stretch. Certainly a fantastic coach, certainly did a fantastic job in all of the ways that Laz just described. Monty would be at the very top of my list if I were Troy Reeve right now.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Jerron Collins and Charles Lee, but there's just, anytime you bring in a first-time head coach, it's a gigantic risk. You don't really know what they're going to do. You don't really know what their development track is as a head guy, how to run things. But we have, two teams where Monty Williams had to pretty much make it up as he went along. New Orleans wasn't the most fantastic situation after CP3 left. He had to navigate that. And then, like you just said, Laz, with this Phoenix team, where it's like, okay, now we have CP3, even though we were kind of like a developing team. And now all of a sudden we need to be a title team. I think he's handled it well. Schematically, he's done great things. So yeah, Monty Williams definitely should be at the top. Hopefully I think, I can't remember which beat reporter said it, but they said Tuesday after the lottery is when they're supposed to announce the coach. Hopefully that won't change with Monty Williams becoming available, because I don't know about you, but me and Joe D here, Joe's trying to get an inside track, getting on the phone, seeing who it is, but nobody's picking up for him. So I don't know what's going to happen. But
it'd be real funny if before the lottery, Troy Weaver's like, we don't want any coach who only wants to come here because we got the number one pick. They get the number one pick on Tuesday, and then Monty Williams is announced the next day. And he's like, oh yeah, I totally would love to coach that kid. That's
yeah, I know. Especially the comment already has been out there, right? I don't want a coach who doesn't want the number one pick or needs the number one pick, and it's like, okay, I'll believe it if you announce before the lottery, but we'll see. So again, today we're talking about that lottery, though, top 5 picks, because the furthest the Pistons can fall is to number 5. They cannot fall any further than number 5. Let's just reveal our big boards. I don't know if you want me to start or if one of y'all want to start. I'm happy to go first if need be.
I'm curious about your big board, Steve, because you have paid, I think, closer attention to this draft cycle than either of us. So I want to hear from you first.
So my big board top 5 is, of course, Victor Wembanyama at the top, Scoot Henderson number 2, Ausar Thompson number 3, Cam Whitmore number 4, and then Jairus Walker number 5.
All right, we're gonna talk about that. Now my big board is not nearly as shocking as yours now either, and so I appreciate that. My big board is I have Vic at 1, I have Scoot at 2, I have Ausar at 3, like you. I have Amin at 4, and I have Brandon Miller at 5.
Ooh, okay, this is going to be interesting. Mine is going to be the hot take, apparently. So I got Wemby number 1, of course. I've got Brandon Miller number 2. I've got Jairus Walker number 3. I've got Cam Whitmore number 4, and I've got Scoot number 5.
So before we start highlighting different people within there, let's just talk about Victor Wembanyama. This is the segment that I just entitled Wembanyama Love, because if we get number 1, you just can't say enough good things about him. I've talked about him ad nauseum, not only here, but on my podcast, Resball Pod. So I want to hear from y'all first, either Ben or Laz. What is your take on Wembanyama? What would you be feeling, and what have you seen from him that you're like, man, I want to talk about this right now?
I love that he spent basically the year for the 92ers. Just like learning how to be
copyright that. That's the first time I've heard somebody call him
that. Learning how to be a primary offensive option, even if I don't think, even if I think that's his future role in the NBA, I wouldn't ask him to do that right away as a rookie. So I like that he tried to expand his game and like focused inherently on like with a specific nature on the year of like I'm gonna be the number one guy. I'm gonna expand and like I'm gonna see where that gets me, and it's gotten him like very very far. You love the ball handling for a guy that height. You love obviously the shot for a guy that height. The shooting is more potential than actualized right now, which I think people don't. I think people aren't paying as much attention to it just because he's the no doubt number one pick, but he is kind of like a 31% 3-point shooter right now. And like, ideally you would like that to be higher. Right. And it's also like, it's not like anybody's going to block the shot. So it really just is a matter of like whether it's going in or not. And then there's the defense, a front line of him and Duren just like blocking out the sun, grabbing everything on the boards.
Block party.
It's just, he'd be a great fit for this Pistons team that needs serviceable defensive big men who can also rebound the basketball. And then he's just like a little hint of like shot creation ability. There's like a lot of shot creators on the roster, but like having another mid post isolation guy as an option like would be useful. And then just like just selling some tickets, man. 2 number 1 picks on the roster, getting excitement in the building for a team that has won 23, and 17 games over the last 3 seasons. It's like, I think Wemby would be great. Wemby's amazing.
I think that adds up to 60, 23, 20, something like that. Like, didn't the Warriors win that many in a season not that long ago? I think also, Laz, you meant to say Wemby and Wiseman, right? That was the starting. Okay, so here's the thing that intrigues me about Wemby. I want to know how much Kevin Durant is in him, right? Because like you see, like in the scouting reports, okay, like anything from Kristaps Porzingis to Kevin Durant, right? Like you see like this hybrid sort of big man, swing man combo, right? The concern, I think, is about his frame and his durability as a full-time 4. And I think that's fair. He's obviously got to add strength over time. He's still a kid, right? So he's got to build up his frame and strength and conditioning, and all that's going to happen over time. But I am just tantalized by his ability to potentially slip into some absolutely devastating mismatches, right? Where he does develop his ball handling over the next 3, 4, 5 years in the way that I don't think a lot of stretch 4s and 5s do, because he's certainly shown flashes of that are better than I think any of the stretch 4 and 5s other than maybe a handful in the NBA currently have, right? Like, I mean, you look at a guy like Giannis, he's able to get to the rim, but not because he's, quick and flashy, just because he's so long and can outrun and just get through and by people, right? Like Wemby's got this just incredible gracefulness and artistic flourishes that he's able to do that I think it's more like a guard than it is a big man. So I think that's the thing that's so tantalizing. I mean, at the end of the day, you want the ball to go in the basket, but I think there's something that you can appreciate about the gracefulness and the artistic there's just the artistic flourishes that I think when you see a guy as big as him do it, there's just something that if you love basketball, you just love to see something that's just like a unicorn. Like it's just, you just don't see that kind of thing happen. So, and of course there's a clip that just went absolutely viral that, the man shoots a 3-pointer, gets his own rebound and dunks it. Like who does that? That doesn't happen. So, you think as a fan of basketball in general, to think that he could wind up on your basketball team like for a decade plus, like, I mean, you almost don't want to hope that it could happen because of the crushing disappointment that could result from hoping that. But yeah, I mean, that it could happen, we could be so lucky.
Yeah, and give you some context on the shooting numbers. Wembanyama is shooting 28.3% from three on 5 attempts per game, but he's shooting 83.7% from the free throw line on 6.3 attempts per game from charity stripes. So if you're somebody that believes that free throw percentage says something about your touch and abilities as a shooter, Wembanyama is somebody to buy into. Another thing to think about is Luka Doncic in the ACB, the Spanish league, his last season there. He shot 28% from three on 4.2 attempts per game. And then in the EuroLeague, he shot 32.9%, was 77.3 in ACB from the free throw line and 81.6. Again, if you're going to buy into somebody as a shooter and having these other things. And also in the European League, the shooting numbers don't always necessarily translate to say like, hey, they're a fantastic shooter, because a lot of times they're double and triple teamed, or they're just not getting up quality open looks like that. So yeah, but I'm with you, Laz, and like the shooting, I think is just like the cherry on top. You more or less want him to be sort of like a Giannis, where you just let him grab and go in transition. You figure out how to get him to the rim as much as possible, and then hope that his post game can get better if he gets more and more strength in his lower body. So now we move on to the point of the program where we say, okay, this is who I want to highlight out of my top 5. So I'm just going to turn it over to y'all. Who do you want to highlight 2 through 5? So we talked about Wembanyama. Now we have 2 through 5. Who do you want to highlight out of these other 4 prospects in your top 5?
I want to talk about Ausar Thompson. Ausar is, Steve, you and I both had him 3 on our boards, and I think that's just because of the conversations we've like had. But when people really advocate for Brandon Miller as kind of this like 3-and-D prototypical wing who slots into what people think the Pistons need. My view is that Ausar, if you believe in the shot, if you believe in his ability and capability of improving as a shooter, Ausar slots into what the Pistons need a lot better than Brandon Miller does. One of the things that is really impressive about Miller is the whip passes and the playmaking he's able to do, and as like a live ball dribbler. Ausar also does that, right? One of the big strengths of Brandon Miller is his ability to like create his own shot in the mid range. It's like Ausar can do that. Ausar is also like a much better athlete. I think this Pistons team really needs like an infusion of like high level athleticism on the wing. Right now, like we went from like, Livers and Bogey and Sadiq Bey, and all those guys are skilled, right, but not necessarily athletic and not capable defensively to the point where or not able to use that athleticism in a way defensively that like would benefit the team as a whole. This like really crystallized for me that game Lauri Markkanen scored like 45 on us because we had nobody to guard him. Is like we need an athletic guy to be out there playing a wing, even if it's not a wing like quote unquote stopper position. It's like Isaiah Livers like can't be your best perimeter defender, right? Like you just can't have that. And I think Ausar has the potential to be that in a way that like Brandon Miller just kind of doesn't. So yeah, I'm really high on Ausar. I realize I might be higher on Ausar than others, but I have also heard from hashtag sources that Ausar is higher on not necessarily Detroit's board, but he is higher on other teams' boards than like you would imagine him being, right? And so I'm not alone on this island of Ausar love, but like I also it's not just you and me, Steve, right? Like Ausar is a really interesting prospect for this Pistons team.
Yeah, and he's an easier sell than his brother because his brother just doesn't shoot very well. His shooting, obviously, Ausar's shooting still has to come along. But the tale I've been telling for Ausar's shooting in particular, preseason Ausar was 1 for 17. That is 5.9% in 5 or 6 preseason games. The season starts, they have a 16-game schedule for OTE. In games 1 through 10, he was 13 of 36. Ausar shot 36.1% on 3.6 attempts per game. In the final 6 games, 11 through 16, he was 5 of 24. That is 20.8%. So it looked like Ausar was like, oh, maybe he just had this 10-game hot streak, whatever. He definitely cooled off down the stretch. Their playoff start, they have a 5-game playoff. Asar put up 39 threes, and he shot 38.5%. He drained 15 of them on 7.8 attempts per game. And that's always a positive indicator to me as a shooter, is you keep putting them up, because that's the only way you get better as a shooter, is you keep putting them up. The worst thing you can do is just, go in a slump and then just sulk and not do it, because that's the only way to get yourself out of the shooting slump. And especially for somebody still developing, the only way to get better at it is to continue to do it under live fire. And oh, by the way, he's still a great athlete. He's one of the best cutters in this draft. I think he and Cade would be perfect teammates, because Asar is always looking to catch lobs and Cade is always looking to toss lobs. So you can start him at least out from the corners. It's going to be rough, but like you said, when you compare him to somebody like Brandon Miller doesn't have this level of athleticism, does not have the same defensive tools that can project him to guard, like shooting guard all the way to power forward. So yeah, easy to say number 3. Ben, who do you want to talk about out of your 2 through 5?
Well, I guess I'll talk about Brandon Miller, because I want somebody who can make a shot. And so here, let me talk about the Thompson guys first. The reason I have those 2 guys and Scoot, so the Thompson guys aren't on my list at all, and Scoot is low on my list. Given the information that I have as a fanalist, I don't feel confident about evaluating those 2, because I just don't feel like I have the tools that I need to evaluate the level of competition, right? I struggle to know, like, the Thompson kids, absurd athleticism, absolutely absurd athleticism. And there's no question that athleticism is real NBA level athleticism. I don't have a question about that. But I do wonder the extent to which it is over amplified or over magnified because of the competition that they face. And I just don't feel like I have a good handle around, like, how does that level of competition equate to the highest levels of the NCAA and or the G League, right? And I just don't feel like I have a good sense of that. Other people probably have a better sense of it than I do, clearly. And so I left him out for that reason. Scoot, his shooting numbers scare the heck out of me. So I'm supposed to be talking about Brandon Miller, but I'm talking about other guys. So that's what we do on the podcast. This is what we do. But Brandon Miller, to me, like, highest levels of NCAA competition, just a kid, shoots the absolute air out of the basketball. And he does it in every single way that you can shoot the air out of the basketball. Catch and shoot, off screens, off the dribble. The Pistons so desperately need that skill on the wing. They've got it in Bogey, obviously, but Bogey is old and he's not getting younger, and he's not going to be a Piston for much longer. And what is defense? Bogey has no idea, right? Or maybe he does and he just can't because he's old, right? Brandon Miller does not project to be a great defender, but he's young and he can learn. And I am a big believer that it is, easier is not the right word. I'm a big believer that when you get the right coaching staff and the right culture, it's more likely that you can have success coaching up defense than you can have coaching up something like shooting. See Killian Hayes Exhibit A, for example, right? Look at the early Dwayne Casey years as another example of this. And even the Van Gundy years. Like, I think all of those teams, except for maybe last year, were better defensively than the sum of their parts. And offensively, it was always a struggle. So, like, I'm optimistic that if you get the right coaching staff in place, you're going to get more out of this collection of Cade, Ivy, Duren, whoever else you get defensively, because you get the right system, the right coaches, et cetera. So give me a guy who at 18, 19, 20 years old is already a knockdown shooter with athleticism, a good work ethic, and some decent athletic skills, right? And I think you can coach some of that defensive stuff up in the right scheme. The other thing I'll say about Brandon Miller, I have entirely stayed out of the off the court conversation issues around him. And all I'm going to say about it is I trust that NBA franchises have the resources to vet that situation. And I trust Troy Weaver and the Pistons to vet it. And so I'll say the reason he's number 2 on my board today, right, point in time right now, if the Pistons feel comfortable with his situation, then I would feel comfortable with his situation. If they don't, then I don't either, right? And I'm not going to say any more about it than that. But just as a basketball player, my goodness, would I love to see a 3-man who can shoot the ball like he can next to Cade and Ivy, because I feel like he opens up space for those two guys to put the ball on the floor in a way that they would absolutely thrive next to. They obviously, Cade didn't have that as a rookie, and I think that forced Cade to carry a lot of the load that it impacted his efficiency in ways that we didn't love. Obviously, we hardly saw anything from him last season because of the injury. And I think what we saw from Ivy was he certainly got tons of capacity to score on his own and to facilitate, but he had to deal with the same sorts of double teams and clogged paint and clogged middle that Cade had to deal with as a rookie all season long. So opening up the space, giving a guy who can knock down shots, sign me up. I would love to see a guy like Brandon Miller in a Pistons uniform.
Yeah, good point on the off the court stuff. Again, like you said, trust NBA teams are going to dive into that as much as possible. With what's going on with John Morant right now, I am going to assume that like the best teams are going to do even extra work into it now. Whereas like, even if you didn't suspect this kind of behavior out of somebody before, or even if you felt confident, you're like, you know what, I see this happening now. So I think we need to invest some extra resources in understanding personality, understanding what else is going on there, who he surrounds himself with, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, that's a big X factor in it. Again, just trust that if the franchise says, okay, we've done all this homework into it, that they're responsible enough to do it. So we shall see. But yeah, he and Grady Dick are the two for me that like they are the best shooters in the draft. If you say somebody else other than them, you're wrong, right?
I mean, what about the UConn kid, right? Hawkins.
No, come on now. Hawkins is good, but Miller and Grady Dick get it off the dribble, off the catch from a variety of different angles as the primary option. Like Hawkins did it kind of as the primary option, but he had Sanogo, he had Tristan Newton, he had Andre Jackson setting him up for easy looks and stuff. So I think Brandon Miller and Grady Dick, like they just saw double and triple teams. They didn't get easy looks pretty much ever. So yeah, and Brandon Miller, I mean, if you want to say Brandon Miller is the best shooter in this draft, I have no qualms about that. Yeah. My comp for him has been Peja Stojakovic, which we'll come back to here in a minute. And I mean, if you want to say that's his floor, again, I'm not going to argue with it, but if you want to say he's less than that, I would have a hard time buying into it just because of his jump shot. It seems like he can get it off anywhere and everywhere. And at that size, it's just hard to block, right? High release, all that kind of stuff. So the one guy I do want to highlight in my top 4 is Cam Whitmore, or in top 5, whatever. It's top 4. It's Laz, Wembanyama, and then the top 4 pretty much, right? So Cam Whitmore, the one stat I think people haven't talked about enough is that Villanova team was 2-6 without him, which is a 25 win percentage. And the Villanova team with Cam Whitmore was 15-11. Still a 57.7% win percentage, not like world beating, but the difference with him and without him was night and day, not only because of the gravity that he provided to where they had to send extra help his way and worry about him driving and dunking and ending their life there on the court, but on defense too. Like he was basically the point of attack defender out there. They were like, all right, Cam, like you need to go guard the point guard, you need to go guard the ball handler. And he didn't really handle much of like the forward type defense that you would normally think. So I really like him as man-to-man. And as the season went on, he got better and better from 3. Like the season stats say 34.3% from 3 on 4.2 attempts per game. The last 20 games, though, I mean, I believe he was dealing with a shoulder injury to start off the year and then came in about 5 or 6 games into the season. After those first 6 games, final 20 games of the season, Cam Whitmore shot 37.3% from 3 on 4.2 attempts per game, 58.3% true shooting. So I like that when he started rounding himself more into form, you saw that percentage go up and him be able to just be more comfortable and do that. The other thing is that Villanova team, like, oh my goodness, they were one of the worst teams for me personally to watch. They only were saved from the mess by South Carolina. And I love Gigi Jackson. I had to watch a lot of South Carolina games though. And oh my gosh, those were the absolute worst. But the Villanova team was not far behind them because they did not pass the ball. I know that's the thing everybody wants to harp on with Cam Whitmore, but the leading playmaker on Villanova was Caleb Daniels with only 86 assists. And the leading playmaker on Villanova with the assist percentage was Justin Moore at 21.8. Everybody else after that had 16.7 assist percentage or lower. And on the totals, everybody under Caleb Daniels had 56 assists or fewer. Like they just didn't move the ball. It was like pass, pass, pass. And then that guy dribbled and did something. Or with Cam, a lot of times it was like somebody tried something, like Eric Dixon tried to back somebody down, or like Justin Moore, Caleb Daniels tried to get a shot off. And then there's like 5 seconds left on the clock. And they were like, Cam, rescue us here. And they passed him the ball and like he had to get a shot off. So I think those things need to be factored into it as well. Definitely helped them win a lot. The 3-point percentage went up, can still score. The one gripe I have on him is I really wish he got to the free throw line a lot more than he did. His free throw attempt rate for the year was just 25.1%. At 6'7", 232 with his handle, with his ability to dunk like that, like you got to be putting more pressure on the rim. You got to be getting to the line more. So that's my only gripe. But as somebody you want to find, because I keep going back and forth between Cam Whitmore and Asar at number 3. I think Asar has more tools and these other things like his cutting ability. Cam doesn't quite have that. Cam is more like on ball and looking to create his own shot a little bit more. Asar has more passing chops, I think. Cam's not bad, but again, he was just on that team. But man, Cam, I think, is the best and easiest fit outside of Wembanyama because you want the small forward with size, 6'7", 232. You want somebody with really good athleticism that's not just a dunker, because Cam will have lateral ability on defense to cover on the perimeter, is a better perimeter defender, which is what the team needs. And oh, by the way, he still has that gigantic upside at 6'7", 232 with a handle, mentored by Melo. So you know he knows how to put the ball in the deck and to score and to get a bunch of moves. I really like Cam Whitmore.
Steve, do you think Cam is actually 6'7", right? Because that has been my main thing, is that I think he's actually like 6. It's like Bruce Brown was listed at like 6'6", and like we learned out Bruce Brown's like 6'4", right? And like Bruce Brown is 6'4" and Bruce Brown is 6'6" are two totally different players. When I look at Cam, I don't see somebody who's 6'7". I see someone who's 6'5", like a burly 6'5", right? A strong 6'5", a super athletic 6'5". But like, I don't think he's a wing. I think he's a guard, and that's what keeps like pushing him down my personal board. Is that I don't actually think he can be like the 3. I don't think he can be like your ball handling, rim attacking 3. I think he's your ball handling, rim attacking 2. And if that's the case, I'd rather have Scoot, right?
He can jump over a guy who's 6'7", though, I think.
That's true.
Yeah, I know. I tweeted you guys that picture where he's like clearing every single one of the vertical max thing. It's just ridiculous, his level of leaping ability. To answer your question, though, on if I think he's 6'7", I think he's 6'7", 6'6". He's probably like 6'6" without shoes and like 6'7". I'm trying to find, because I saved pictures on this. So shout out to Scott. Scott's always on Measurables Watch.
Like, I knew if anyone was on High Watch, it was Scott for sure.
So I saved these pictures where Cam Whitmore's standing next to Khalil Ware, who's 7 feet. And then he's standing next to the guys at the FIBA that also won awards at the FIBA Under 19 America's Cup last year. And he's in between Khalil Ware and these other guys that are listed at like 6'4", 6'3". And it's clear that he's somewhere in between there. I need to find those pictures again and post them. But to me, that was where I was like, this looks like a 6'7" guy to me. I think maybe it's because he's just like broad, you know, when you're like almost as wide as you are tall, you don't look quite as tall. He's definitely on team. He's got to be on yours though, because he's on team 2 swole and he's on jumpy jump list, right? He's got 2 of those things going for him.
Yeah, Adam Spinella had him at 6'9" wingspan as well. So
yeah, I think if he's like anywhere approaching 7 foot wingspan, then yeah, like you got him at a wing. And even if he is a shooting guard, I think that's just even better for him. Like who wants to guard the 6'5", 232 shooting guard, right? And in today's small ball, like you can still play him at the 3 if he has the requisite wingspan. My worry would be if they're like, oh, he's our power forward of the future. Like I get that like the ball handling is definitely a mismatch and the shot creation is definitely a mismatch at power forward, but I don't know, the rebounding and the shot blocking, like you in the NBA, you have to be more of that weak side rim protector and definitely got to pull in more rebounds at the 4. But yeah, I definitely like Cam at the wing. So now let's move on to if any of these in your top 5 would feel like a disappointment to you. Say like, you know, they get the pick number 5, they get your number 5 pick, would you personally feel like, man, I know they're 5 on my board, but this just feels like the season was a waste?
I feel like I don't want to disagree too harshly with Ben's board because I love Ben and Ben's a great guy. But I feel like
Let me have it, Les.
if you win 17 games and you get Jairus Walker, like that just kind of
Oh,
feels
careful,
bad.
careful.
I don't think Walker is a bad player, right? And I think he would definitely be an effective addition for this Pistons team. But I don't see the upside as much as I do see with some of these other players. I think he has a long way to go as a ball handler. I think he has a long way to go as a guy who can like pressure the rim consistently in the half court. I love the defense. I think he's going to be a serviceable, not elite level shooter. And so, as just like a guy who I think is like a B plus to C plus in everything, like at 5, that feels a little bit like a disappointment. If you get a top 5 pick and you lose 17 games, I want an A in something, and I don't think Jairus Walker is an A in like any real thing aside from like being too swole. Again, team too swole. Jairus Walker looks like he has very heavy hands.
What position do we like? This is where I'm stuck on him a little bit. What position do we feel really confident he can play consistently in the NBA?
4.
Whatever
In, like,
position
that
OG
way.
Anunoby plays is my answer.
He can't dribble like OG. He can't.
Well, if you listen to the No Ceilings guys, they did an interview with Marcus Sasser, who was his teammate at Houston, and he was telling them like, "Yo, Jairus has one of the best handles on this team. Like, he just didn't get to show it." And that's part of my sell on him is I did a lot of pre-work on him and Keontae at IMG, and Jairus could really pass the ball, like 4.1 assists. I think he had some like 385 assists across 4 years in high school. That's the one thing that Houston did not let him do as much as he could have. If there's anybody that I would ever like try to market as like, hey, remember Bam Adebayo did these things in high school that Kentucky didn't let him do in college, I think this is somebody that could be like that, and part of why like I've been more bullish on him. Not to say Jairus is going to be Bam, but I think Jairus has OG's like base level skills on defense, and then he has these other Bam Adebayo qualities in it to where he's going to be somewhere in between those two. And that to me is like, man, that player is somebody I want, and definitely somebody the Pistons need to. I think also Jairus could play the 3 to where you could play like Cade, Ivy, Jairus, Beef Stew, Duren, and triple beef lineup, right? That would be awesome to see.
Triple decker.
I worry about like functional spacing in such a lineup.
Yeah.
Like even if Jairus and Stu were both shooting like over 35% from 3, are teams going to treat them like they shoot 35% from 3 in that lineup? Like I don't know, and that makes me worry. And again, like I don't think Jairus is a bad player, but to go through the season we just went through and get Jairus would be a little disappointing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess part of it for me is I buy into Beef Stew as a 3-point shooter, because when you saw the numbers like pre-shoulder injury and post, I was like, this just seems like he's going to work out and it's going to make it work when he's healthy anyway. Ben, do you have any Jairus Walker takes?
So, I mean, I'm a big fan of his. Defensively, he's the opposite, right? Like he's the flip side of the coin of everybody else we've talked about, right? Because his strength is defense and his weakness is his offense, right? I mean, every other guy we've been talking about offense, and I think every guy who's in most big boards in the top 10 is an potential offensive juggernaut, right? Like Jairus, you look at him and every scouting report leads talking about his defensive versatility, his ability to match up 2 through 5 pretty well, right? Like in pick and rolls. And then you don't want him to match up against point guards, but in a pinch, like he can do okay. And then you look at the last 2 seasons the Pistons have had, particularly last season, and it's like, okay, hey, here's a guy who not only is good at defense, but relishes playing defense. Like I was watching Adam Spinella's breakdown again for like the 3rd time of Jairus Walker. And it's like, you can just sort of see, and this feels just like so Detroit Pistons to me. Like you can just sort of see his drive to take over the game defensively, right? And do you want to take that with the third or the fourth or the fifth pick? I get what Laz is saying. You probably don't. And you might feel underwhelmed if you do. But if that defensive capacity translates and he's able to be, maybe dominant's too big of a word because we just don't know if that's going to translate. But if he's able to in some way capture the game defensively at the NBA level the way he was at the collegiate level, then I think you've really got something special, right? Offensively, Laz's comments are all on point. I think there are some really serious question marks. Like, I think one of the things Coach Spinella pointed out was like once he gets into the lane, he's got this really bad tendency to throw up these off balance floaters. He struggles to create separation. He doesn't get to the free throw line. And these are all things you'd expect a guy of his physical capacities and his strength to be able to do really well. So offensively, he's very much a work in progress. But defensively, like, I loved what I saw. I mean, he moves his feet so well. He stays on his feet instead of falling for pump fakes. He stays vertical. He doesn't like drift into the ball handler and commit a bunch of stupid fouls. I mean, that's crazy for a kid his age, right? So
Yeah.
I really, really like him a lot. I get what Laz is saying completely. It's just that it's like you're trading, like you look at the Thompson kids, for example. We didn't talk about Amen particularly, but like totally broken jump shot, in my opinion, right? You have to totally rehab that jump shot.
We'll get to them in a minute, him in particular.
Yeah, but the upside is just this stupid, crazy athleticism, right? So it's like with a kid like Jairus, you have a different set of upsides and a different set of downsides. So it's the which one do you want to choose, right? And I personally would be happy if we landed Jairus. Maybe there's a situation where you trade down to get him if you're not in love with your options at the 5, right? Maybe the lottery balls bounce poorly.
Get behind that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the lottery balls bounce poorly, and you don't love your options at 5, so you trade down to 7 or 8 to get him.
Right? Yeah, the two things I'll say about Jairus, though, is like it is incredibly rare for a team with title aspirations to bring in a freshman and say, you are our defense. That's what Houston essentially did with Jairus. And they already have a good defense, but he's such a good defender. They turned it over to a freshman. It's very, I mean, it happens every year where they turn over the offense to a freshman, right? KD, Michael Beasley, Cam Whitmore to some extent this year. Bryce Sensabaugh was basically like that for Ohio State. But it's a really, really, really rare that a team that wants to win and not only win, but win a national title brings in a guy who's 18, 19 years old, and they let them be the cornerstone of the defense. So that's a rare company, rare ability that rarely ever happens. In terms of his three-point shooting, Jairus Walker took the most threes from the left wing. He took 25 there, and then he took the most threes from the right wing with 28. In both of those spots on the court, he shot over 40%. He was 40% from the left wing, 46.4% from the right wing. So that, to me, is a positive indicator of like when you take the most threes and you're red hot from that area, then something is working there. I don't know if you double the attempts, if it stays that hot, but at least it is a good indicator that the spots where he was most comfortable, the spots where he got the ball the most and put up the most shots, he shot not just good, but very well. So those are at least two positive indicators in the profile. But yeah, I agree that the 3-point shot, I think, is the thing that not necessarily will make him or break him. If he goes to another team where he's already surrounded by shooters, like say San Antonio, where they already have Keldon and they already have Devin Vassell who can put up shots, then maybe it's less of a thing. But here in Detroit, where it's already space challenge, like that pretty much has to be priority number 1 or 2 for him. So yeah.
If he goes to San Antonio, Pop is going to turn him into a beast.
Yeah, he's going to be a nightmare for everybody else. All right, so we talked a little bit about fits here, but I want to get into more specific ones, starting with Scoot. We've all kind of alluded to Scoot here, but let's talk about the Scoot fit. Like, what is your thoughts on that? And Ben, I kind of want to start with you since you had him 5. You might be the only person I've ever seen have him at 5, which I would say kudos to you, though, because I think there are people that want to do that, but they're scared to. And I think you have quite a bit of reason to put him at 5. So let's talk about that.
All right, so yeah, I'll go ahead and start by just saying for people who don't know me, I'm a big believer in balancing what you see with a reasoned approach to statistics. So I'm gonna cite basketball reference here. Again, this is G League stuff. He's a very young man. He's a kid playing against grown men in the G League. So I'm taking it with a grain of salt. Um, but this scares the heck out of me. In the G League, offensive rating of 98, defensive rating of 122. That is staggering. That is staggering. And it translated into a negative win share. Has a lot to do with his scoring efficiency. His shooting numbers are really, 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 really poor. It's not just the 3-point shooting, but it is the 3-point shooting that tanks that. But really, for me, it's about the fact that they've got Jaden Ivey, who there's just so much overlap between the two guys, right? And I would need to have a reason to think that Scoot is significantly better than Jaden Ivey, like dramatically better than Jaden Ivey right now, to take him and give me that 3-guard rotation. And I just, again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I don't feel like I have the information where I'm sitting as a fanalist to know that. So like, I feel like I would need to be able to sit in a gym and see the two of those guys going through workouts. Like I would want to see Scoot in a workout behind the 3-point line, shooting hundreds of thousands of 3-point shots to know, like, is this kid going to be able to thrive as a 3-point shooter in the NBA? If I had that information available to me, maybe all of a sudden he jumps to number 1 or number 2 on my board, right? But right now, like, what I see and what I've seen on film from him in the G League is a Derrick Rose kind of player. And I need some
Have
real
that guy
convincing.
5 on your board?
Yeah, man. Who is Derrick Rose leading anybody to an NBA championship when you've, like, who is Derrick Rose leading to NBA championship in the year of our Lord 2024? He shot 53% true shooting percentage. I mean, he's 19 in the G League.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe what does that translate to in the NBA? I mean, that's like Killian Hayes numbers.
I think
Is that not?
that is Killian's numbers are actually probably worse, but like, yes.
No, but if you were in
is,
the G League, would that not be Killian Hayes
yeah,
numbers in
I
the
see
G
what you're
League?
saying. Yeah.
I mean, there's 3 years of difference in age, 2 years of difference in age, and Killian can't dunk and can't get to the rim, and I mean, they're totally different players. But like,
from an efficiency standpoint,
is the
like
hype?
over
I'm
the
saying
course of
I
the
feel like
season,
the
it's
hype
the
train is a
same. Yeah.
little bit out of control. He shot 27% from 3 in the G League. Like, that's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. Right? Like, objectively, that's really bad.
So it's like he shot 27% without the showcase, and he shot like 32% with the showcase. And the showcase like did actually happen. He did play those games. That just like doesn't get captured for whatever reason. And my eternal frustration with like, what did Scoot actually shoot from the floor?
Yeah, so real
continues.
quick, like you have to go into the NBA G League stats, and under where it says profile, there's one that says season type. If you click on that,
Yeah,
you
no,
should
I
have
got
one
it.
that
I'm
combines
with
the
you.
two.
I'm
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I got it. I got it. I'm with you.
But yeah, like so Ben, you're asking me where like Derrick Rose puts you in the year of our Lord 2023 in the NBA. And I think with what we know, with what teams and players and coaches know now about like gravity and spacing, I think having Scoot and like your center be your only non-shooters can still make for a functional offense at the NBA level because of Scoot's ability to read and process the floor at a very high level. Like that is the thing that is the thing that stands out to me the most with Scoot, is that like normally with these guys who are hyper athletes, right? They do not process the game at a high level because they are too busy being battering rams and just like going through everyone, right? Like the improvement we lauded Jaden Ivey for over the course of his rookie season was in his ability to like read the floor and make plays for others instead of just trying to drive like 100 miles per hour down the lane. Like Scoot already has that. Scoot had that last year, right? Like that was the thing that like really stood out to me and impressed me about him. So he already like sees and thinks the game at a high level. And the other thing is that like because he is an elite athlete, like sometimes, just like Jaden Ivey, you can just push the go button and make stuff happen in transition. And like that is, and free throws are the most efficient offense there is, right? And the G League free throw numbers are weird because they only shoot one free throw for the first 46 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And Scoot is a like okay, not amazing free throw shooter, but like there's definitely a world in which I see like Derrick Rose type creating like 8 or 9 or 10 free throws a game, like makes him a lot more efficient than his current like G League numbers show. So yeah, it's just like the combination of athleticism and floor reading, like processing ability, is just like what really endears me to Scoot. And as far as fit goes, right, there's the big question of like, can you play all three of these guys together? And the answer to that is like maybe, and you probably don't want to anyway. And then it's like, okay, like which two guys do you play then? And my answer to that is like, it does not matter. It like literally does not matter. If is like what you are not eliminating like Jaden Ivey or Cade Cunningham from the rotation when you draft Scoot, like if you get to draft Scoot, you are eliminating Killian Hayes, right? Like you are eliminating that inefficiency and like that defense and processing ability for like a guy who's a much better athlete, a much better threat as a scorer, who reads the game at like a slightly less level, but like not enough to matter when it comes to the athleticism and the scoring ability. And you're pairing that guy with like Jaden Ivey or Cade Cunningham, or you're two of those guys, two of Jaden, Cade, and Scoot would like be on the floor at all times if your coach knows what they're doing, which is an open question because the Pistons don't have a coach right now. But they don't have to all play together for Scoot to be the right pick and for Scoot to be an effective like player for this Pistons team. Just because you can't close or start games with all three of them that matters less if you win the like other 30 minutes in between the first 6 minutes of the game and the last 6 minutes of the game, because like you always have two of the most explosive guards or two of the two primary initiators on the floor at all times. I'm a big fan of Scoot. I'm a big believer in Scoot. To me, if you had Jaden Ivey above like Keegan Murray last year, and you have Brandon Miller above Scoot Henderson this year, like that tells me something about your evaluation, right? Is that like that? It's like after seeing the rookie years like both of those guys had, it's like you would clearly like, even though Keegan had a really solid year for Sacramento and looks like a very good NBA player, like Jaden Ivey looks like a potential like all-star level guy, and it does not look like Keegan like hit that level. And so to me, like Brandon Miller is kind of like Keegan Murray last season. He's 3 years younger, right? But like the big asks for him are shooting and defense, and like maybe like a little bit of play creation, and like don't stop the offense, don't stall things out. And with Jaden, it's like when Cade goes down, it's like do a lot for us, and like we will fill your plate. And have that be something he steps up and is able to do. Like the ask for Scoot is going to be something similar on Detroit. It's like play next to Cade, play off of Cade, but like if Cade's on the bench, like also like now you're the point guard, you're initiating, you're setting up Jaden, you're setting up Wiseman, like you're setting up these bench units. And like I think he can absolutely do that. And I think he can do that, and that will be more helpful than Brandon Miller shooting 38% on 6 attempts a game and not really offering the Pistons like much else in terms of offensive like advantage creation.
Yeah, I'm at the point where if the Pistons get the second pick, they need to trade down. I mean, Bryce Simon and I, shout out Bryce, first episode of this Woodward Pistons draft show, we talked about the fit with Scoot Henderson, and his thought was like, okay, you can start all these three guys, but then 5 minutes into the game, one of them comes out and the other two stay on. 5 minutes later, one of them comes out and then another one either comes back in, or like, so that way you always have two of them on the court at the same time. And then it just depends on who finishes the game at that point. The more I've thought about it, though, the more I'm like, that could work, but this still seems just like the end of this story resolves in one of the three getting traded, Cade, Ivy, or Scoot, right? One of those guys
Ivy.
probably not going to be one of those guys probably not going to be happy with that role, and one of them probably out of necessity becomes more of like a sixth man. And it does the one thing to me I do not want this team to do, and that's move Cade to small forward. Like, it just takes away too much of his ability, even at shooting guard, to be mismatched at that size with the ball handling ability, the playmaking, all those things. You make him basically an average size small forward, pushing him there rather than a big point guard or rather than a big shooting guard at that point as well. So I really think if the Pistons get the second pick, they need to explore every single option for trade down. I'm with Laz, like, I believe in Scoot, but I think the ability to do of, like, say a trade with Orlando, say Orlando falls in love with him. Orlando slotted for 6 and 11 right now. 6 and 11 can still get you somebody like a Jairus Walker. Maybe Brandon Miller falls there. You get one of the Thompson twins. And then at 11, probably get somebody like Grady Dick or somebody like Anthony Black or even somebody like G.G. Jackson if you want to roll the dice. It's worth it there. I think those two types of players, and for me too, the top 7 in this draft is really like the prime area of the draft. If you fell outside of that, I think it would be a little bit more of a disappointment. And again, the Pistons just need talent everywhere. And with Scoot, that's, again, I hate to just talk about fit, but with who they already have, it's just going to be a really, really hard sell and a really, really hard time to develop 3 primary ball handlers at the same time, and to build somewhat of a semblance of a defense when your 2 guards, your backcourt, are bad defenders, because Scoot just is not a good defender yet either. Ivy's got a long way to go there. So it just seems like it's not maximizing the pick. It's not maximizing the potential. And with how much so many other people have talked up Scoot, like, it seems like this is an area where if you get the second pick, you can leverage that desire from somebody else into getting a bunch of extra picks or getting in something else that is worth a lot.
So, okay, so this links back to what I'm saying earlier. This is my big board for the Pistons, right? And this is if I could watch Scoot in a gym shoot a whole bunch of threes, I could just evaluate his shot, and I'm confident he's a much better shooter than what we've seen in this small chunk of games in the G League, right? Because mechanically, his shot is great, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything wrong with his mechanics. I think he's probably, if I had to guess, he's probably just a kid adjusting to shooting. I mean, he's taking this, what is still a very unexplored path to the NBA, right? Which is skipping the NCAA, going through the G League, right? He's probably a kid learning how to shoot against bigger, taller defenders, and it's a longer shot than high school, right? If he is a good 3-point shooter, to me, it looks like his ceiling is higher than Jaden Ivey's. That's my opinion, right? As of right now. If that is actually the case, I mean, he's younger than Jaden Ivey, and if Troy Weaver is confident in that read, if that's the read that he would come to, if everything Laz says is correct and everything you just said is right, Steve, and it comes down to it, eventually you can't pay all 3 of those guys max money. That's ridiculous, right? Then I think you trade Jaden Ivey, and I was kind of interrupting you saying that. Like, of those 3 guys, Ivey's ceiling is the lowest, but there's nothing saying you can't have all 3 of them on rookie deals at the same time, and then you sign and trade Jaden Ivey when it comes to it, right? Like, that's ultimately not a terrible outcome either, because you can get something of value for Jaden Ivey when it comes to his restricted free agency, right? Like, that's not a terrible position to be in. You just have this awkward couple transition years where you're sort of cycling them through the rotation. And
do you think you get more for Jaden Ivey in that scenario, like down the line? Or do you get more for trading down from the number 2 pick right now and like not even putting yourself in that scenario?
Yeah, see, that's my point too, is like, Jaden, you probably devalue one of those 3 guys by doing this weird rotation thing, and one of them gets disgruntled, and you end up having to just do it even though you don't want to do it further on down the line.
My thing is, like, what if one of those guys isn't as special as we think they might be? It's like this is also a backstop against, Cade not being as good as we think he might be, like Scoot not being, maybe Scoot doesn't ever figure out the jumper, and he's just like, and he ends up in like a Fultzian situation where like he's still like, quite clearly a starting level NBA guard, but not a guy that you like really want running your team if you're trying to like run it at a high level. It's a backstop against that, and even in that case, right? Like if Orlando picks up the phone and asks other NBA teams like if they want Fultz, like they could get something for him, but you probably get more doing it now while the number 2 pick is a mystery box instead of a boat or a horse or whatever the Family Guy skit was.
I like Fultzian. That's a good word. I like that one.
All right, so let's move on to another point guard with an even more questionable jump shot, and that is Amen. Did any of us have Amen in the top 5?
Nope.
Item 4.
So, okay, why? Even then, it's at 4. Like, he was the one to start the year that a lot of people wanted to put at 3. Like, what's with the fit here, and why would you still want him in the top 5? Because to me, he's the one that fit absolutely has to come into question, and I think he has to be drafted by the absolute right team in order for him to maximize his development.
Yeah, so he wants to be a tall point guard. I don't know if you can shoot as poorly as he's shooting and need as much work as he needs on his jumper and be a tall point guard. And so if you take him, it's just really like the upside of upsideiest plays. And I think 4 and 5 is like a good spot for that. But if you get a higher pick, like I'm not comfortable just like rolling the dice just to have to roll the dice with that. You love the athleticism, obviously. I do love that like he's able to force any possession, any like individual possession, like into a track meet. That could just be a function of like what we saw in OTE and the level of competition that Ben talked about a little bit earlier. But if you are like a 99th percentile athlete in even like at the NBA level, like you'll be able to do that on a semi-regular basis. And like that is an advantage. That's something that Pistons like don't currently have really. Like even Ivy, when he pushes the pace, he got better at this as the year went on. But he would still kind of like push the pace and like kind of blow the bunny, and then like you're stuck going the other way. Not to say anything bad about Jaden Ivey. I know how people feel about me and Jaden Ivey, despite all the nice things I said about him since February. But yeah,
it's no worse than me. I'm the Jaden Ivey hater. I've been labeled it, so it's all.
But yeah, I think Amen just like has a long way to go in a way that like also doesn't fit what the Pistons could use in the meantime, right? Like I don't like, we talked about the 3-headed monster of like Cade, Scoot, and Ivy. Like you like Cade, Ivy, and Ahmed. Like, do you start all 3 of those guys together? Like that feels weird. It's like, do you run Ahmed off the bench and then like you have 3 or 4 non-shooters on your bench lineups? Like the fit is just very odd, and there's no denying the athleticism. There's no denying the upside. You could easily do Keith Black's podcast in like 15 years, and you're like, oh yeah, Amen Thompson like clearly should have been like the number 2 overall pick. Like he's a Hall of Famer now. Like we were all very stupid, but yeah, you can't trust it. And I prefer not to trust it. And so yeah, that's what I'm feeling about Amen, and that's why I'm in 4 instead of like 3 or 2 on my board.
Yeah, 25% from 3 in 16 games in OTE, and then I believe he was like 65.6% from the free throw line as well. So it's the dreaded combination of under 30% from 3 and then under 70% from the free throw line. I think defensively, like Amen could play the 3, Cade could be the 2, Ivy could be the 1. I think that fit actually defensively wouldn't be that bad. But yeah, offensively, like Amen needs the ball in his hands the most, right? So it's just hard. And even if he pans out to like somewhere in the middle, Like, he doesn't quite reach a ceiling, but he's not a complete bust. It's probably something like Darius Miles, right? Where he's more of this finisher. He's a really good defender, but just is not a threat from three. In 2023, I don't know that Darius Miles stays in the NBA. Sorry, D Miles, but like with that level of just non-shooter, I don't know what that even is, right?
And I mentioned this earlier. If you watch the lowlights of his where he's missing threes, for people who are interested in shooting mechanics, watch in particular like the very end of his jumper, his follow through, and in his misses in particular, see if any two of his misses look the same. Like his mechanics are a mess, and it's going to take a long time for that to get straightened out. Like he is absolutely a project when it comes to his jump shot in a way that's going to take a while to straighten out. And like for the Pistons, like I personally don't believe all the PR. Like I think Weaver knows they're a ways away, but like I think Amen is a ways away in terms of his shooting. And I like, look, Cade and Ivy, I like both of their upside. Neither of those guys are pure shooters right now either. Like you look at their 3-point shooting numbers, Ivy made some progress, but Cade was not a good shooter as a rookie. I'm willing to write off last season due to the injury, but he's got work to do as a shooter too. So, I mean, I don't know how many non-shooters you want to have at the same time.
Yeah, and not only is he a bad shooter, he doesn't want to take them. He only took 2.7 per game at OTE. That's the one thing to me that I just can't buy into your shooting if you're shooting a bad percentage and you also don't want to take them. It's just like, man, this is hard. The one thing I will say in his favor, though, is I did do a podcast, maybe like the third one of the season for me at Resball Pod, where I looked into does shooting even matter and tried to find guys in the NBA's past where they had under 30% from three and under 70% from the free throw line. The three most influential ones and the three most useful ones for me in thinking about Amen and Nassar were Jalen Brown, Pascal Siakam, and DeJounte Murray. All three of those guys shot under 30% from three in college and under 70% from the free throw line, but ended up having different paths. Pascal really used that defensive versatility. Still takes them, doesn't shoot a great percentage. He's had one or two seasons where he shot well from three, but the defensive versatility, the spin move out there, he's had one thing that he's really been dominant at and been a fantastic, useful player that can guard anywhere from the 3 to the 5. And then DeJounte Murray, like he does everything well but shoot, right? He's a great defender. He's great inside the 2-point arc, fantastic passer, great point guard. And then Jalen Brown's the one that did end up working out, just spent a bunch of time. The first year, he was pretty pedestrian in his stat line and everything, but just spent a bunch of time working on that 3-point shot to get better and better. So if you buy into Amen and Nassar, those would be the three guys I say in particular to go look at, because again, the jump shot was just a mess. And Pascal's the one I probably have the most knowledge of because I'm originally from New Mexico. So I saw Pascal a lot play against my Lobos. And if you told me he wouldn't be able to shoot threes at all, I would say you're out of your mind. I mean, just the ability from him to go from basically like center, traditional power forward at New Mexico State and Cruces to what he is now, just a lot of work. And that's the thing too, you buy into with the Thompson twins. If you've done any background work on them, they're basketball obsessed. You know, they're going to put in the time and the work. But yeah, like you said, with the Stars jumper, it's so far behind.
Well, and this isn't fair completely, but it's because it's a Pistons guy. I'll mention it. Like take a guy like Hamidou Diallo, right? Like super crazy athlete, jumps out of the gym, dunk contests, can't shoot to save his life. And he's trying to resurrect a career on the worst team in basketball and struggling to do so. And the best niche he's able to carve out is like the small ball 4-5. Like, like hopefully none of these young kids follow that trajectory, but like, that's a live option. Like that does happen for players, and the Pistons can't afford that, right?
Yeah,
like
and again, we're not saying Asar or Amen is not talented. We all think Amen
Correct.
is the best athlete in this draft, but if you plop him in San Antonio where they already have those two wings and they have Sohan, that's setting him up to help use that walking paint touchability and his playmaking to help those guys out and look much better. If you plop him in Houston, where everybody else loves putting up shots and they need somebody to help them set it up easier, like that again seems to be more a recipe for success. Whereas somewhere like Detroit or even somewhere like Charlotte where they already have their playmakers or their ball handlers established, it's just a lot harder because it's not setting him up in the best situation. It's not setting him up with teammates who will help him get better, which is what Ahmed needs for sure. So let's give our top fives again real quick and then just ask questions on like what we have for each other about top five. So again, my top five is Wembanyama at the top, Scoot Henderson at number 2, Asar Thompson at number 3, Cam Whitmore number 4, and then Jairus Walker at number 5. So y'all have questions for me on that top 5?
I feel like we've talked about all those guys at this point. I've got Vic at 1, Scoot at 2, Asar at 3, Ahmed at 4, and Brandon Miller at 5.
Yeah, I've got Wemby, Miller, Walker, Whitmore, and inevitable draft bust Scoot Henderson. I feel like that's the closest Laz and I have ever come to blows. I like it. We just needed a different moderator. We needed a moderator to really.
I love conflict though, so that's me. I will always poke the bear and make things, throw gas on the fire, whatever it is. And Joe back here, we don't care, you know.
So one guy we haven't really talked about that's not on any of our top 5s, and I think like deservedly so, but is a guy I've always just been kind of intrigued by, is Taylor Hendricks from UCF. Just
somebody who like more and more people are starting to ask. When I did the live stream and a couple streams ago, like that's the guy that everybody in the comments or in the chat is asking about, is Taylor Hendricks top 5.
He's rising, right? Like you used to see him like 11 or 10 or 11, and now you're seeing him at like 6 or 7. He is rising, and he's rising for a good reason. He's really effective player, good shooter, shot I think 39% from 3. I'm doing this all off the top of my head. Good defender, maybe not as like overtly impactful or as forceful as Jairus, but very skilled in that arena. And a better athlete, I think, than a guy like Brandon Miller, both vertically and like with the ability to like move his feet and shift his weight and cover guys in space. Just a 3-and-D wing that like all teams need, and he's 19, and he sees the floor like okay, not great, and so there's always the possibility where if that guy ever learns to dribble and play make. Like you really have something, right? Like that's the like last big thing like missing in his game. And so it's like if he never hits that right, he'd be like an effective like role NBA player. It was like, but if you ever, like you get like a Phil Handy in there and you like teach him some counters, like you're cooking. So yeah, Taylor Hendricks, a guy like if we're gonna go with Steve's like trade down from 2 to like 6 or 7, like yeah, that would be a guy I would have a lot of heavy interest in.
Yeah, 39.4% from 3, 15.1 points per game. I think he shot like 53.5% from 2-point range, up 7 rebounds, 1.4 assists, and then 1.7 blocks per game. Is a really good weak side rim protector at 6'9", 210 pounds. To me, his floor is Tayshaun. And I don't dish out the Tayshaun comp lightly. I think Tayshaun is one of the most underrated players ever in NBA history because of his versatility to guard guys like LeBron, his ability. He's what I call the mortar player. You know, when you're building a brick wall, you need the mortar to fill in the cracks. Like that's exactly what Tayshaun was. Yeah. Didn't value in any one area.
Hendricks fills in a lot of cracks.
Exactly. But to me, like a mortar player shouldn't be top 5. Like you said, if he could dribble, there are people out there that keep trying to put the Jeremy Grant comp on him. I do not see it. If anybody gets the Jeremy Grant comp, it should be G.G. Jackson, which to me, if you were going to roll the dice on somebody, that would be somebody that I would say like at 6 to 13, somewhere in there. Like, yeah, you should roll the dice on him because he does look like the Jeremy Grant with ball skills at 6'9", 215 pounds. The defense is still not there yet, but I really buy into G.G. as well because I did a lot of background work in him. If you've listened to Rafael Barlow's podcast, he's talked a lot about him being, this high character guy. His circle of influence is super small. It's just like trainer, agent, dad, and that's pretty much it. And I always buy into those types of guys too. And again, just the ability to create his own shot at that size. It's easy to buy into that over somebody like Taylor Hendricks, who I do really like. But again, like you said, if he learns how to dribble, that's a gigantic if.
Yeah, it's like Brandon Miller is like 5 years ahead of Hendricks as a dribbler, right? And he still can't create separation, but like he knows what he's doing, and like Hendricks like doesn't even have that. So yeah, as a guy we haven't talked about and we kind of run through all our top fives, like Hendricks is a guy I'm interested in very much.
No, I'm glad you brought him up because again, he's the one that it seems to me doing this more and more Piston fans are asking about, and it makes sense. 6'10" or 6'9", 210, with the ability to shoot like he is, like that's another guy that just seems like he would fit in seamlessly at the 3 or at the 4. So yeah, Taylor Hendricks I really like, but man, Gigi would be the one that I would pump up. And what I was going to ask about, what are y'all's feelings on Gigi Jackson? Because he's somebody that like I've ranked somewhere between like 15 to like 6 because I like him a lot. But yeah, he's raw and he has these other things in his profile, like off the court concerns, which I don't think are really that bad, but I can understand why people would. So what are y'all's thoughts on Gigi?
That South Carolina situation was just like very, very bad. And so it's really hard for me personally to like parse out how much of his offensive struggles is him and how much of his offensive struggles is like the team around him, in a way that like you could also kind of excuse for Cam Whitmore, but like it was way worse. It just like what you'd watch the Alabama South Carolina game and you just like look at the two teams and like what they were trying to do offensively, and you just like this is two different planets. Like what are these two teams doing? So Gigi is a guy I am curious about, but would prefer to go in other safer directions if possible.
Where would you take that bet at?
One spot after Grady Dick.
Which, if you had to put a number on it, what would it be?
That'd be like 14, 13.
Cool, yeah. Again, the next update of my big board will come out pretty soon. I still have GG at 13, so it's pretty close. And yeah, why do you put him out next to Grady Dick? Because I think that's a good one. There are like 3 or 4 players that I think people are like, I would take X in front of GG. Why is it Grady Dick for you?
Because I Grady Dick is not bust proof, but like I know Grady Dick is good, as I have a very good feeling about Grady Dick being at least a serviceable like long-term NBA player, right? I don't think it's like you take Grady Dick at 12. I don't think Grady Dick ends up being the 12th best player in this class. I think the number's probably higher, right? Guys who can shoot like that, who have his size, maybe not his like strength and athleticism, but like his size, and he's not a terrible athlete. He's a fine like athlete. He might get exposed at the NBA level, but like he's not a terrible athlete. This is like guys who are that size, who can shoot like that, like don't fail, right? Like somebody will always give that guy a chance, and he will always kind of be able to like fill out a 8-man rotation type of deal. So if you don't know who else to pick, right? You traded down to 12, and like the first 11 picks have gone just like in the worst possible order for you. It's like I would feel very good about just like taking Grady Dick. Like, okay, like we have a guy who like fills out the back of the rotation, like done. Like we thought over. And then after that, I start asking a lot more questions, right? Like, how much do I like Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? Or like, do I have Dariq Whitehead's medicals? Can I look at that man's foot? Like, pretty please. And then it's like, can I have like a 2-hour like session with Gigi to like figure out like what's going through his brain at all times, right? But like after Grady, I have a lot more like questions and answers. So that's why he's like my cutoff point.
Yeah, again, I go to bat for Gigi just a little bit here in a minute, but yeah, Grady Dick seems to be like you don't buy him as like super upside. I think there are a few people out there that do, but like Gary Trent Jr. type of player, right? To where you like look at his stats and every year he's shooting it well from 3, and then he's just always solid scorer, right? Whereas Gigi, like the things that I did in the offseason and the preseason, he definitely was very self-aware of being the young guy on that South Carolina team. He talked a lot about being the little brother and knowing what's going on. So, and then again, listen to Rafael Barlow's last podcast. He talks a lot about his maturity and just his ability to be an adult, at such a young age. So definitely go listen to that. So final thing, I know we've gone long, is to reveal where we think the Pistons will go and land with the ping pong balls. So where do you all think the balls land, and what pick do you think the Pistons get on Tuesday?
Ben, do you have the same bad vibes I do about where we're actually going to end up selecting?
Guys, I just went to Tankathon and clicked sim, and I got number 5.
Is that your final prediction,
It's my final answer. Lock it in.
Laz?
Okay, I just did it and I got 3,
Okay.
which is better than 5. But I have also been just like very much feeling like a 4 or 5 incoming. This does not feel like a lucky year. I've seen a lot of like the Spurs rising. I've seen a lot of like Charlotte getting 1. It's just this doesn't feel like our year as much as I'm disappointed about it. It really sucks that I have this feeling when the prospect is so generational. When we have like an elite level talent like Vic at the top of the board. This is the opposite of the feeling I had like heading into the K draft, and so I'm feeling like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm just going to say 47.9% is the odds for the number 5 pick. That seems like what it's going to be. Hate me if you want to, but the odds flattened out. If you're going to use the Philly example of like, oh, they got the top 3 picks like 3 out of the 4 years. Well, number 1, they traded for the first pick 1 year, and that's back when the lottery odds were 25% for the top 3. So that's what it is. It is what it is. And still, I think top 5 is what this team aimed for. The players we all laid out here can have fantastic ability. They're going to get one of those 5. So thanks again to Laz and Ben for coming on. I know we went a long time, so kudos to y'all for giving your time to me, the OGs of Piston podcasting. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media if you want to be found.
Yeah, you can find me for now on Twitter at @BRGulker. Look out for Blue Sky, though. Can't get here soon enough. I'll be there when it launches.
Yeah, if anybody has that Blue Sky invite, like definitely hit me and Ben up. And also you can follow me on Twitter at LazChance. That's at LazChance. I am back on Twitter. I took a hiatus. That hiatus was good, and I'm tweeting less. But if you have draft stuff you want to talk to me about, I will gladly do it with you.
Make sure to spam whatever podcasting platforms you can to get these men back on. Definitely miss y'all's takes on our most beloved Pistons. I think Joe's on the phone here trying to call SB Nation. I put him on hold, so I think they said something about John Kuster. They're not very happy. So we will catch y'all next time. Thank you so much, Ben and Laz, for being here.
Thanks for having us, Steve.